Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Ms. Lewis?
All right.
Good.
Interim Chief John Drake. How
Yes.
about tell us a little bit about yourself this
All right. I'm a native of Nashville. I grew up in East Nashville. Went to the public school system. Graduated from East High School, where I was a three-sport letterman. Wound up leaving there, going to Middle Tennessee State for a couple of years, and then joined the police department later in 1988. I've spent 32 years with the police department. I started my patrol in West Precinct, working some of what they considered toughest areas of town, Joe Johnson, Preston Taylor. Had the benefit of getting to know a lot of people in those neighborhoods. Went from there, worked in the narcotics section, where I did undercover work. Found that while that was a dream of mine to do narcotics work, that it really wasn't my calling because we had made an arrest of an individual, and when we went in to seize all of his items, we wound up seizing toys and things too that he had for the kids. And I remember one of the narcotics officers saying, "Hey, we'll teach his kids not to be drug dealers." And I remember that's not what I wanted to do. And so when I left the narcotics section, I went to the Police Athletic League. There, I spent the greater part of 15 years actually helping kids, building their relationship, working in some of their environmental factors by having coaches as mentors. Those kids today, some are still playing professional sports. Some are principals in schools, have gone to speak in places, teachers, having positive aspects in the community. From there, I left. I went back to patrol for a little bit, and I decided that I wanted to be a role model for police officers. So I decided to test to be a supervisor, and I made sergeant in 2006, and the rest has been history. From there, I made lieutenant, oversaw patrol division. Then I was one of the first African American precinct investigative lieutenants, where we investigated everything from petty theft to homicide. Had a lot of success there. In fact, a newspaper article held a year of no violence, or really no deaths in the J.C. Napier area. It came out on Christmas Day on Sunday. From there, I got promoted, went to domestic violence. I was the first male captain ever in domestic violence, and there I made great inroads in that community with some of the things that I started, and still doing today. From there, I went to become the commander of Central Precinct, which is the downtown area. Formed relationships with the business owners, but also had the opportunity to help the displaced population there. It's been good. In fact, it's helped me establish a quality of life team, which I'll talk about a little bit later. From there, I made deputy chief. I was over the Support Services Bureau, which was SWAT, aviation, mounted, horse patrol, K-9, also our field training officers, our school resource officers, and then every building that Metro Police has. I oversaw the maintenance and construction of those, as well as our fleet operations. So quite busy. From there, I went to the Community Services Bureau, which is all 8 precincts, had employees, 900 plus. And then a short time later, I was appointed as interim chief of police.
Okay.
And that's where I am today.
This year.
This year.
Just a couple of months ago.
Yes, sir.
All right. You're familiar with the Nashville Police Department, time you served. If you're named chief, what aspects of the police department would you change? Would you change?
So what I've done already is made changes is that historically when I came on, we were a reactive police department, which meant a crime had occurred, victim or person had been assaulted or harmed. Then we went to a proactive model, which was the intentions were to suppress crime in hotspot areas and neighborhoods. And what happened was it was a wholesale overwhelming of community. It led to over-policing. It led to people being stopped for traffic stops and Terry stops and inconvenience when they didn't have to. So one of the first things I did was start community engagement. I did away with flex teams and made community engagement where officers can actually get out and walk in neighborhoods, get to know people, let people get to know who they are, reinvest in the community and build relationships. but then also look at tutoring kids. How do we impact them at an early stage and to where it can help us later? That's going to help us build diversity as we have these interactions. Another thing that I've done is that I re-centralized our homicide unit. Homicides have gone from a clearance rate of about 86% to 52%, which means 48% of people committing such a heinous crime were either severely delayed being prosecuted or not prosecuted at all. And so I looked at national best practices. I looked at cities like Baltimore and New Orleans and decided that that's what we wanted to do, and we did. Another avenue is interpersonal crimes and violent crime. So with interpersonal crimes, with domestic violence and youth services, actually, if I'm appointed, in the next month, I want to start a interpersonal crimes commander. Now, an interpersonal crimes commander will oversee the domestic violence division, the youth services division, and also the sex crimes division, because all of those intersect. And that way we can have positive relationships, we can investigate crimes more fully, and we can have more victim buy-in. At the same time, we look at juvenile crime, and violent crime is on the rise throughout the country and in this city as well. And so not to victimize neighborhoods, but look at precision policing. Identify people that are creating problems in problem areas and being able to remove them with the thought of that procedural justice, but also social justice. How do we intervene? Because we're not going to arrest our way out of this. That is not going to be how we solve the problem. It's going to be through restorative justice for those that have offended to get help. And then also look at wholesale families. If that individual is arrested, then how do we find his brothers, his sisters, and get them the help they need so they don't go down the same pipeline?
Okay.
So those are already good.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about your past experiences with organizational, cultural, and strategic planning?
So,
And then, how would you draw on those experiences to make changes to our police department?
So what I looked at in strategic planning is you look at the long-term plan, the roadmap for where you're headed. And so with that, I looked at our displaced population, for one, as one of the biggest in the country. And so how do we help them? So I looked at the quality of life team, to where we can provide services or connect our displaced population to services through the Salvation Army, through mental health co-op, and et cetera. Also, with the interpersonal crimes unit, starting the commander in that area, having those collaborations is going to help with those crimes. So the strategic plan is long-term, is to reduce crime by building these partnerships through through community engagement, through networking, through collaborative efforts with advocates. And so the strategic plan, 5-year plan, is to reduce crime by 5%, but it's done in conjunction with all these other resources.
Okay. Metro's police department, sworn officers, 73.6% white male. When you include white women, it goes up to 81%. What is your thinking around diversity, equity, and inclusion? And how do you seek to increase diversity in Metro's police department? What do you do?
So when I look at diversity within the police department, it's severely lacking. I looked at, we only have 24 African-American women on the police department. We only have 156 women total. We have 211 minority officers, which is not good for a police department our size. So one of the first things I did was we started a recruitment unit. And so historically what people have done to sign up for the police department, they will go online, click on links, and it was a reactive model, but find us and then sign up and go through the background. With the recruitment team, we have female blacks, female whites, male Hispanics to actually proactively recruit. And so what we do is we send them to colleges, universities, out in the community, get to know people, but then they treat them like athletes. Hey, this is why you should be a police officer. Let us help you with this endeavor. And then also, as we become more intentional, I started a campaign within the police department called the Women of MNPD. And so we're having Deputy Chief Lokey meet with all the women, 20 and 25 at a time, to talk about their worth, their importance, but then more importantly, to talk about how they can talk to their friends, their family members to help recruit as well. At the same time, I've talked to a African-American sergeant who's talking to the African-American members of the police department. And so that endeavor is the same as the women of MNPD, but also to network with them and to help show their worth, but also how they can recruit in their neighborhoods. And I think it's going to be good moving forward. I think building those relationships in the community through community engagement, reinvesting, letting kids see who we are. We're also going to partner with the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans have offered to help us recruit more minority officers. And I feel to do that, we have to be intentional. We have to communicate that more. We have to be on social media more about that, which we are. And then we have to get out in the community and engage and then proactively look. Also, started a Chief Diversity Officer, which is the first of its kind for our police department. It's at a captain level. And so he oversees the Office of Community Engagement. The Office of Community Engagement are female blacks, male blacks, Hispanics, and then also Kurdish. We have the biggest Kurdish population in the country here, and is second in Nashville behind the Latino population. But having inroads to that community through this engagement initiative is going to be huge. I've also talked to Mr. Muhammad Hassan with the mayor's office and talking about community ambassadors in the Muslim community, and has already had meetings with some of his members and with him. And so the efforts are going to be intentional. We're going to really ramp it up even more to try to have more diversity and inclusion within the police department. And then that transcends through the community as well. When you have a diverse police department and you're out engaging the community and they get to see people that look like them, that they want to have a rapport with. I know when I go places, people connect with me because of who I am. And so we want people to have that same feeling. If you're Hispanic and you go in a Hispanic neighborhood, we want you to connect, or Kurdish, or Muslim, or African American, or even Caucasian. We want you to have that connection to where we can build.
Okay. What tools do you think are effective to ensure that police officers can communicate with non-English speakers?
So what we have in the police department is the language line. When officers are out on calls, we pay for this service. They can actually dial the number. All officers are issued cell phones now, and they can have a communication through a translator. But also in the academy, we start with diversity training. We start with implicit bias. We start with a mentorship. And we have officers learn about communities. As a commander, I had conversations after the Ferguson incident under the direction of Mayor Berry at the time with a group of young kids, and they liked it so much that they started a diversity bus tour. And so this diversity bus are community stakeholders and police officers that go in different parts of the community, Latino, Kurdish, African American, and have conversations and build those gaps in communication. But then also we have every recruit that comes through, and now every police officer has gone through the Civil Rights Museum to learn about the African American history and the role Nashville played in the Civil Rights Movement. I've also talked to Yvette Long, and a curriculum we're going to bring on board is talking about the history of African Americans. So officers can learn that as well. And we want to expand that to more of Latino, to Kurdish, and to other disciplines, to other communities, so we can have more effective communication. But I think at the grassroots level, community engagement is key. It's getting into those neighborhoods, walking, talking, playing basketball, tutoring, because COVID is ongoing right now. You need to be able to form that relationship, to help people be successful, look at their environmental factors. And while we're building those relationships, then we can have more effective communication. We can connect them to services. And I think the sky is going to be the limit as we continue to build on that.
Okay. Last year, the Metro Police Department used force 299 times. Of those, 181 suspects were black. What would be your approach to the use of force? And if you could talk about your experiences you've had in reducing force. And you talked earlier about, the night a few months ago when you had to use a certain type of force and you promised yourself that you did not want to have to do that again. Can you talk about force, the use of force, and
Absolutely. So one of the very first things I did was have a communication with our entire police department. I feel these incidents around the country, some are through a sense of urgency, where officers arrive on the scene, and instead of believing in their training, they escalate the situation. They progress it to a point where they have to use force. And so what I've told them is that we need to pull back that sense of urgency. Also, in the academy, I've made the theme for adding additional training. I've revamped the way we're doing it now to more de-escalation. That's the theme of every recruit and every police officer that comes through, is having de-escalation. But then also, a prime aspect of community engagement is being out there and getting to know people. And so when we started these community engagement teams, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to get away from the warrior mentality to the guardian, to, hey, we are here to help you. We are here for you. We want to have movie night with you. We want to have ice cream day. We want to have field day. We want to tutor you. We want to get to know your family. And all that does is build relationships and helps us in the long run. I even had an officer that had worked the flex teams. That was the proactive policing, going out making traffic stops, stereotypes, and et cetera. And he told me, he said, I found that people actually like us. And I said, it shouldn't have taken me to get you to realize that, but it's good that you see that now, because now you value people and you value who they are. And that's the mindset I want, is that it doesn't matter when we take an oath of office, it's for every community in Nashville, whether you're the most vulnerable or you're the most affluent. We want to help you, and that's what we serve the community for. And so by doing all that, by using time, distance creates time, then we can reduce the use of force. Also, one thing that I've done historically, and I work some of the worst areas of town, is what they would say the worst, where officers have been killed, assaulted, et cetera. And I only had 2 uses of force in 32 years, because I believe that you can have a conversation with people. And a field training officer told me early in my career that he'd rather have a 30-minute conversation than a 30-second fight. That's what every officer needs to know and needs to hear, that you value the community, you engage community, but then let's talk. Let's lose that sense of urgency, let's pull back, and let's use the time that's on our side.
Okay. Do you want to talk about I don't want to force you to, but the incident with the gas?
Sure. That was May 30th, and it was right after the George Floyd incident. And tensions were high throughout the country, and one of the most horrific scenes that I've ever seen. In my opinion, it was a criminal wearing a police uniform that committed a murder. And to watch that severely hurt, and it inflamed a lot of people. We had protests and demonstrations, and mostly peaceful. But what we found were there was antagonizers from both the left and right, whether they were Antifa or Proud Boys or Boogaloo, and then some other people. But they had the sole intention of creating harm, creating damage. They were throwing explosive devices. We had bricks that was thrown at officers that hit officers. We had officers that were choked. had to save officers from situations. And they came here to this courthouse and began to damage it. And at the time they broke the glass and set the courthouse on fire is when the time I had called then Chief Anderson to say, we need to do this. We need to do gas. Because one, we have a building that's on fire. And then two, we don't know if there's people inside either. So now we could have an even worse situation. So we gave the decision to use gas.
And you know, tear gas.
Tear gas. And never in my career did I think we were going to have to do that. And hopefully never again. And that's one of the main reasons that I want to have community engagement, is that as people get to know us and we get to know them, then there's a vibe in this city right now. You had a situation in Philadelphia, and people are not rioting here. They're not protesting here because they feel a sense of difference. And I hope that our efforts are playing a part in that. I hope that by engaging the community, being honest and forthright, by me having a relationship, a rapport with the COB, with Gideon's Army, had a conversation with Noah, trying to reach out to all different groups to make our community better, and I think it's helping.
Okay, so my next question was going to be, 2 years ago, Nashville voters created one of the strongest community oversight boards in the country. What would be, I mean, you have Noah, the mayor appointed the policing policy commission. What would be your approach with those different agencies?
So
organizations, rather.
Yeah, my approach is I believe in my community, and Nashvillians overwhelmingly voted and supported the COB. So I overwhelmingly support the COB. And so one of the first things I did was start a rapport with Dr. Fitchard. They had been in negotiations for the MOU almost going on 2 years, and it wasn't any real success. One of the first things that I wanted to do was try to make headway in there, and I wanted to do it working through not only the COB but through the mayor's office and having these communications to where we could move forward, and we are. I've already signed an agreement for a records release, and that we expect to have the MOU signed very soon. One of the other things I did is that I started the Chief Diversity Officer. Because I wanted to make sure, and that's a captain, it's a high-level person in our police department, that can have communications with the COB, with NOAA, with Gideon's Army. It's already reached out to them. And so when a COB or a NOAA or someone else has a meeting and I can attend, then he can attend all of them because that's his job. And so we build those relationships, we build that rapport, and not ever seen before is that through my leadership this is the direction I want to go. This is my strategic plan, is that we interact with groups that we haven't historically worked with, but then not only work with them, but have that rapport and that relationship.
So do you build relationships, sustainable relationships and partnerships with such communities, Black communities, Latinx? How do you do that?
Absolutely.
Is it tough? I guess some of those communities may not trust the police department and say, don't come, we don't want to see you, or do they want help, or what do you think?
We run into a little bit of all of that, but we run in mostly people want to get to know who we are. And so what we've done is with the community engagement, people are scared of what they don't know. If they don't know officers, and officers are just coming in, making arrests, making traffic stops, and leaving, then that creates a void and creates that warrior mindset. And so having one community engagement, but then having our Chief Diversity Officer who oversees our Office of Community Management, community engagement, which is new. And so we have officers that are Laotian, African American, Kurdish, Latino, and they'll be networking on a continual basis all the time. So you look at El Protector, which was in the South Precinct, and it dealt mostly with Hispanics in that area. That'll be pulled under this same umbrella to have a centralized approach throughout Davidson County so we can impact everyone. And so, in fact, have an event Saturday at a Hispanic location the lady reached out to me after I went out and had a conversation with her and several other people in that community. And she said, I love your vision, and I want to partner with you, and I want our community to get to know officers so we can have trust and we can build trust. And so it's already working on that. And even on Saturday is considered my off day, but I don't have off day. I'm going to go because I'm committed to making sure that we build trust with even those communities as well.
Nashville currently has a budding or developing pre-arrest diversion program, and it's home to a new 24/7 crisis treatment program. Talk about your approach to mental health issues, and what do you believe?
So I've started one aspect of it. I started the quality of life team. And so when you look at the displaced population, most of them have mental health issues, drug addiction, and so forth. And so I had a conversation, we started the community life team to one, form that relationship, another community engagement effort, but to form a relationship with the displaced community. But then also, I had a conversation with Judy Tackett at the Homeless Impact Division and how we did something similar in domestic violence. Everyone had the same approach. They wanted to stop domestic violence, but they were working in silos. So it was good for, I thought, the homeless advocates, displaced advocates, to come together and form a solution. And so now the Homeless Impact Division, Park Center, Salvation Army, and others are coming together to help get people into housing. I've also had communications with the mobile crisis team about having a co-response model. So the co-response model would be plainclothes officers, as we have seen, and really on SWAT situations, that the uniform by itself sometimes can escalate situations. And so when you have a person in crisis, we can have a plainclothes officer team with a mental health expert, and I've talked to mobile crisis and some other experts. And we're coming together to help in that endeavor as well.
Okay. Interim Chief John Drake, thank you very, very much. And good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having this moment. Thank you also to the Policing Commission. Thank you for volunteering your time. I look forward to seeing your recommendations. I look forward to seeing, if I'm appointed, how we can bring those about in our department and bringing us up to 21st century with some more practices. It's really an honor to get the chance to work with you all.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you.